we've got a guest analyst. He's right on time. He's a friend of the house. He is Dr. Wisdom Enang, Senior Energy Consultant and Analyst. Dr. Wisdom, good morning.
Hi, Vivian, good morning. Hi, Olumide, good morning.
Good morning. Happy weekend. Oh, thank God it's Friday.
Dr. Wisdom, thank you for being you, and thank you for always being punctual.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's talk about this statement that the Labour Minister made that has Olumide and I scratching our heads. It's on the front page of the Punch. It says, job creation, not part of my mandate. Now, let's talk a little bit about population explosion in Nigeria. And then the Labour Minister comes on board and says, job creation is not part of my mandate. What happens to these graduates that universities and colleges of education and polytechnics push out every year? I mean, let me not put words in your mouth. What's your take?
Yeah, I think that statement shouldn't have come out in the first instance because, I mean, basically, you know, I try to tell people one of my problems with bureaucrats is the fact that bureaucrats measure efforts is more of their delivery and not the outcomes of their efforts. And so when someone says, my job mandate is not, creating jobs is not part of my mandate, I think I worry because it therefore means that they are sort of separating themselves from the...
Dr. Enang, are you there? Wow, it must have been the network. But I like where he was going.
I like it, and I know we're getting him back, and he's going to land with this very important statement he's making.
I like where he... All right.
Dr. Enang, glad to have you. We lost you a little bit, so can you start again? Tell us what you were saying, please.
Yeah, all right. So what I'm saying is this, that the statement made by the Minister for Labor shouldn't have happened in the first instance. That's, you know, that's misleading. Because, to be honest, how do you separate, you know, the fact that a minister who's supposed to put all the imperatives in place to create that ambience for jobs is saying that, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
We can hear you.
Yeah. That job creation is not part of his mandate. And this is the problem I have with people that are bureaucrats. Bureaucrats only focus on efforts and not the outcomes. To them, the effort is the deliverable and not the outcome. So it's a bit careless. It worries me and even tells me whether or not he truly understands what the layman's interpretation of all the bureaucratic abracadabra that he does in office, what does that mean for the layman? The layman only wants to measure whether there's a job increase or whether there's a job, you know, level of reduction in the amount of jobs in the economy.
Very well said. Olumide, over to you.
All right. Of course, we have the Labour and State in another loggerhead and all that. Now, the State are hoping that they will come to a conclusion before the December 1st deadline, which the Labour is giving them, the ultimatum the Labour is giving them, for a total shutdown of the economy as to implementing the minimum wage. What's your thought about this? Do you think states can actually beat this December 1st deadline? And if they can't, what do you think the Labour would do? How far do you think the Labour would go this time around?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I think we need to look at all the imperatives that are required to meet those deadlines. And I'm going to speak a little bit from the experience in my state and what the governor is doing.
What state is that, Doctor?
Akwa Ibom.
All right.
All right.
I know what the governor is doing. And this is it, right? Okay. So what the governor is doing is this. Before implementing the minimum wage, he's said to everyone, I'm going to do an audit to make sure that we don't have ghost workers. And not just paying the minimum wage, but who are you paying it to? And the system that you're paying it to, does that allow leakages in the economy? And so he's doing an audit to say, okay, look, I'm going to implement it, but let's do an audit. Let's make sure that people, first and foremost, are legitimate, the people that work there and are being paid. Let's migrate more to a digital platform that allows us to manage all of these people very easily. And let's get to a point where we can assign and make sure that each of the personnel within the public service are, put there on the basis of value. Because what you typically find is that in one particular ministry, you may have people that, there's some sort of redundancy there. But in another setting, they are looking for people. So all of those make sure that people are in the right space before you even talk about implementing the minimum wage. So it's not just a rush. And I think it's just a disconnect between what the the state governors are looking at and what the Labour are looking at. I think both of them need to communicate to say, look, these are the challenges we're facing in implementing it, and this is how we're resolving it. And even when you're talking about implementing minimum wage, how do you deal with some of the legacy debts that now is going to present itself by way of the local government autonomy? Some of the local governments, are owing salaries already, and if you're talking about taking them as an autonomy, then who is going to pay for all of that debt, and how is it going to be worked out? So a lot of things in the background that needs to be considered.
All right, so let's say they don't beat the December 1st deadline. How far do you think the Labour is willing to go this time, considering how Labour is also synonymous with calling off strike at the last minute, the dying hour? What do you think the Labour would do this time? They said total shutdown. Can you paint us an idea or a scenario of what a total shutdown would be?
Yeah, total shutdown would just say everyone on the Labour Union, pull back, do not work, nothing would function. But I don't see it getting there. I just see a situation where it's like, okay, let's move the deadline. Because when the meetings start happening, you will see the state governments, like I've just lay out some of their own challenges and uniqueness in adopting the new minimum wage. And you clearly see that there's need for time. You don't want to pay ghost workers new minimum wage, and if those ghost workers are at least 10% of your workforce, then that's an enormous leakage in your open costs and overhead costs. So definitely, it's worth doing the due diligence before we start paying the new minimum wage.
Before I draw your attention to something else, Doctor, like Olumide said earlier on, the governors were not on the round table, beg your pardon, when the federal government and Labour had discussions prior to implementing the new minimum wage. How does that even happen? And now they are running around for a last-minute dialogue with Labour. What's your take on this, being proactive as against being reactionary?
Yeah, I think you're right. There's definitely a gap there. And I keep seeing that gap operate because, as I said, just like I've laid out right now, you could see clearly that there's some sort of logic around the imperatives that the governors have to go through to implement the new minimum wage. But was that well communicated? Was there a kind of agreed deadline on each of those imperatives that I did list out? And are there other peculiarities? In fact, if each state is running in silos, I don't see that advantage of having the lessons learned. So other states may have challenges that, okay, some other states are not having. And that dialogue in itself is not just to help them interface with the union, it's to help within the states itself. Because, for example, Lagos State may have an experience that Akwa Ibom hasn't had, Akwa Ibom may have what Edo hasn't had, and then they can cross-pollinate ideas and say, this is how we dealt with this idea, this stuff, this is what we're using at the moment, and this is how we've gone around, even the digitalization platform, this is how we've done it. So I think it's important, and it's a shame that it's happening more in a reactive manner. It should happen in a very proactive manner, taking all stakeholders, including Labour and the federal government, along.
Yeah.
All right, if I might ask you, this thing about ghost worker, it didn't just start today. During the administration of former President Muhammadu Buhari, we had job racketeering. I don't know what happened to that case. So it's not a case of, they're just discovering this. It has been happening. It has been happening a long time. People are abroad, living abroad, working, enjoying themselves, and they're still collecting salaries in Nigeria. So now, it's a good thing that the governors are tabling this. So are we going to see an end to this ghost worker, job racketeering, entirely?
Yeah, I think we're going to see an end if we have the political willpower to deploy solutions, innovative solutions in Akwa Ibom State. Two things are being deployed. The first and foremost is with the deployment of technology and innovative solutions to make sure that everyone on that, that job portal that we have, and the employment portal rather. There is validation using your BVN, your NIN, and all of those stuff. So it means that you're unique as a person. And of course, there will be a digital footprint by way of attendance to make sure that it's that person that is attending. So not the analog one where you come and sign a book and anyone could sign for you. So there's that one. And the digital one helps because what used to happen in the analog one is that there'll be a standby instruction that, look, no matter when you come in, do not sign past 9 o'clock, for example. Even if you come in by 12, sign that you came in by 8:05 or something. And so there was a lot of truancy, people taking advantage of those gaps to exploit the system. So I think first and foremost, all those reforms at the state level will help to engender efficiency and would also help to make sure that those ghost workers are checked. And then, of course, periodic validation of each of the staff, making sure they come in, physically. What the UK used to do, let me just share an experience, is when they give you a student visa, they could give you a 24-hour notice that they are coming to your to come and have a look that you're in school and make sure that you're actually in school. Or they could even ask you to come into the UKVA office and just do a stop check, or even your local student office, immigration office. So all of those methods were deployed to make sure that students don't get their visas and then they go out of the country and do something else. So we can deploy them certainly here if we have the political willpower to do so.
Very well said. Let me draw your attention to this other story that's been on the front burner. It's also on the front page of the Daily Trust. It says, reps in rowdy session over tax reform bills. Just one rider, and it says, proposals scale second reading in Senate. Let's talk about the tax reform bills for a bit. Are you for or against?
I mean, definitely I'm for the tax reform, but the question would then be, does it, encompass the sort of reforms that we ultimately need as a federation? No. It's a good step in the right direction. Absolutely, I do agree. And why it doesn't encompass is ultimately, if you look at people that run a federal system of government, like the US, for example, the states will collect their own taxes and then pay their own share to the federal government, because the idea is to decentralize fiscal control from the federal government ultimately. But why do I think it is important? It is important because the step that has been taken, because if you look at the profile for VAT, for example, only Lagos or Abuja, for example, will take most of the VATs, even though the consumption happens in various states. And even when they collect it, they send it to the federal government. It is then shared on the basis of a formula that would look at more of the population of the various states that they share. So they share it more to the states on a population basis. And I think it is important, if you want to engender productivity, to make sure that there is some direct correlation between the money that people are making and how much they get to keep. And the reversion-based tax system, VAT, is one of the ways to say, look, the more you stimulate growth and consumption, the more you actually keep more money in the economy. So I think that's a fair basis. Yes, some of the northern governors have said, no, this is going to be a disadvantage to some of the states that did not have the legacy opportunity to develop the industrial base. But I do agree. But it doesn't mean that just because they were that way, that they couldn't improve. I mean, let's look at Rwanda, what has happened. Rwanda wasn't a place that was quite known for their industrial prowess, but today it's one of the classical examples. Rwanda, Senegal. So definitely, I think, and that calls for people that are very ingenious to get into political offices, because once you put people that are entitled in mindset, all they think about is the fact allocation. But if you put people that understand the terrain and want to take advantage of exploiting those resources, they will be able to create value out of absolutely nothing.
I agree.
All right, let me draw your attention to the Guardian newspaper. It talks about Amnesty International accusing the police of killing 24 protesters in Kano and others. This has to do with the End Bad Governance protest, which about almost 100 underage protesters were, jailed but later released and all that. This puts the Nigerian Police Force, in a bad light. How do you see a situation, hypothetically speaking, or fingers crossed, do you say a situation whereby that phrase in every police station, the police is your friend, could actually be the truth?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. When it comes to police brutality, it's something that has, of course, we've had cases in the UK, in the US, even in Canada. But I think the difference is there's always an ongoing, concerted effort to make sure that the police force, the trainings are rejigged to make sure that they're more people friendly, and that, of course, people see them as a solution. Because if you see the police as a solution, you're more likely to want to help them with intelligence gathering. You're more likely to want to help them with all sorts of resources and information to support them. So I think the first thing is the police college themselves need to relook at how do we rebrand the police force to make sure that people feel that confidence. And also, again, it has to also do with our judiciary system. I mean, yes, we've got some of the precedents that have been set with a lot of those people, some of the minors reprimanded and then, gone through the trial. It looks like it's going to be against them. Again, we need to put a framework to understand how hard do we have to get on some of these protesters. Some of them are minors and some of them were just harmless and advocating for some sort of change, but though in a different way than I would have sort of thought about. But definitely, I think we need to have that. I think realistically, we need to have a framework that means that people have the right to protest as long as it's not violent, and they do so without the fear that at the end of the day there'll be reprisal for doing so.
Very well said, because it is also constitutional that Nigerians can protest, and the police is actually supposed to secure the protesters. But let me also finally draw your attention to this story before we wrap it up on this second part of the newspaper review. This story on the front page of the Punch says, Port Harcourt Refinery, controversy surrounds NNPCL claim on operation. Can we not have drama? Can we at least have the refinery running without drama? What's your take on this?
Again, it is possible to have the refinery working, but there's a lot of things that I'm hearing. In fact, so much so that it's so hard to keep up with, because you think you've heard it all. It's the start of the day. Tomorrow is being blended, and then next tomorrow, it's still the old inventory that was bought, and all of that. I think it's very difficult, but I think what we need to get to a point is we need to ask ourselves a very hard question. Is this going to be an operational facility that is going to make, TMS? That's the first business case. Can that functional under the NNPCL, or does it need to go to a private hand? Again, a bit of clarification would help when we're talking about when they said privatization, because you see privatization on one line, and a couple of lines later, you see that they will privatize the operations and maintenance. When you just having someone to operate and maintain for you doesn't mean you're privatizing, because privatization has to do with sales of equity, so or some sort of ownership by the other party, and then you choose who becomes the operator. So when you are saying that, my worry is that even when you kind of outsource the O&M to someone else, what about the decisions that are going to be made? As long as those decisions are domiciled with the NNPCL, there might be no sort of innovative thoughts coming outside the box, because it's always going to be the same set of decision makers around. So when we're hearing that, I'm looking at it more like an irony or an oxymoron, putting two conflicting things side by side. Saying that you're going to privatize, at the same time saying that you're going to, do so for the O&M. So I think a lot of clarity would help. There's been so much obscurity around the whole concept of the Port Harcourt Refinery. I think it would just help for the government to come out and say, this is exactly how we're going to do it. This is the path forward, or it's a bad business case and it's something that will not work. We made a mistake.
Yeah.
All right, quickly before we go in less than a minute, a report from Daily Trust. It says Tinubu pitches investment in food, security, solid minerals, and others. President Tinubu is in France right now trying to woo investors, telling them to come and invest in Nigeria. But he's also letting them know that the situation in Nigeria is not looking good. Do you think that he will be able to convince these international investors to come to Nigeria? Because I mean, let's be real. People actually know what is actually going on in Nigeria. I mean, regarding what happened with the utterances of Davido and all that, and how the backlash came up. Do you think that President Tinubu would be able to convince investors enough to come into the country and invest?
I think one of the things that President Tinubu can do, I'm going to draw insights from the story in Mozambique, is to show how he's going to protect those investors, both from an investment standpoint and both from a security standpoint. Mozambique has been known to be plagued with militants, but I can, without a doubt, that ExxonMobil, for example, has a lot of gas deals going on in Mozambique and different countries. Meanwhile, gas deals will not be even sanctioned here. Now we are having associated gas, not non-associated gas, which is what we need for industrialization. But two things, against all odds, Mozambique has been able to, one, get the right fiscal system in place to show that, okay, yes, we are ready for the investors to come in and take the gas and do whatever they want with it. Second is the, creating a security framework to protect those investors. I think, yes, President Tinubu is, sort of a realist by saying this is the challenges that we have, then these opportunities, but I'd like to hear that this are the mechanisms in place that we put to de-risk the whole investment to as low as reasonably probable for all investors. And I think that's exactly what will be the silver bullet in all of this.
Absolutely. And this is a safe place for us to land this morning. Doctor, you have been brilliant. Thank you for being a part of the show this morning.
Thank you very much, and enjoy your weekend.
Thank
you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Enjoy yours too.